Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today, we are starting a brand new series here on the channel called Fact or Cap. We're going to be looking at a variety of different things in this series, but our first episode here is focused on the quarterback carousel. So if this is something you guys are interested in moving forward, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, smash the like button if you do enjoy today's video. It means so much to us. We're just about at 1,900 subscribers. You guys have been absolutely killing it for us lately. We appreciate you all so much. So let's jump into it here, with the first fact or cap being about Sam Darnold. Fact or cap, Sam Darnold will get traded this offseason. I'm going to say cap for this. For those of you that don't know, cap means that it's not truthful. So I do not think that Sam Darnold will get traded this offseason. I actually expect Joe Douglas to not go quarterback at the second overall pick. I expect him to go either wide receiver Devontae Smith, possibly wide receiver Jamar Chase, trade down, or look at Penei Sewell out of Oregon. Those are really the routes that I think he is going to go at this point. I really trust Joe Douglas to get this back on track, actually, for the New York Jets. He killed the first-round pick last year with Mekhi Becton. I think he's going to come back, either get us a weapon or another piece on that offensive line, something to build around. And I think he's going to give Sam Darnold one more year. I think those last two games of the season might have bought Sam Darnold one more season with the New York Jets. This is his fourth year of his rookie deal now. The fifth-year option, that'll be interesting to see if we do extend him on that, or if we do not accept that option. That'll be something to monitor, but I think Sam Darnold will be back for the New York Jets as the starter next season. Factor cap, Russell Wilson has played his last game as a Seattle Seahawk. This is cap as well. There is no way Russell Wilson is going to get traded. Teams are calling about Russell Wilson. He is going to be a Seattle Seahawk for the foreseeable future. I almost fully expect him to finish his career in Seattle as well. I know he has some frustrations about the offensive line protection. Expect the Seahawks to be aggressive, grabbing an offensive tackle, maybe some offensive linemen in the draft. They do not have their first-round pick, though, so that'll be a little bit difficult for them moving forward, but Russell Wilson will be a Seahawk at the end of the day. Fact or cap, Carson Wentz will get traded before the start of free agency. This is 100% a fact. He will get traded from the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, where do I expect him to get traded? That's a little bit tougher. I think the Indianapolis Colts will be interested. I think the Chicago Bears will be really interested. There's going to be a few teams making calls here about Carson Wentz. I'm not fully sure what a trade package would look like for Carson Wentz based on what his value is. He played so terribly this past year, but historically he's been a fairly good QB, even had an MVP type season before he tore his ACL the year that they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. But I think his tenure in Philadelphia is done. They're taking a lot of offers for him. I think at the end of the day, they are going to accept one of those offers and move on from Carson Wentz. Factor cap, Derek Carr is the starter for the Las Vegas Raiders next season. This is one of those interesting ones. Since John Gruden's got there, there's been rumors surrounding Derek Carr, if he's the guy, if he's not the guy for the Las Vegas Raiders. But I do think that this is a fact. I see Derek Carr being the starter for the Las Vegas Raiders next season. Partially, he's played so great the last year and a half or so for the Raiders. He had a very good season this past year, really kept them in a lot of games. Their focus needs to be improving on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion. Maybe beef up that offensive line just a little bit more. But Derek Carr has not been the problem for the Las Vegas Raiders the past year and a half. He's not going to be the problem next year either. I see him being the starter for the Las Vegas Raiders at least one more year. They're also not in a position where they're going to grab one of the top QBs in this class, so it makes it a little bit harder to see them really pulling something off here. Does Derek Carr probably have a lot of trade value? I think he probably does off the season he just had, but I don't see it likely that the Raiders move on from Derek Carr. Factor cap, Marcus Mariota is on the Raiders next season, and I find this one to be cap. I think Mariota is the QB that they will deal, and they actually look very genius for bringing him in. He got to play in the game that Derek Carr got injured earlier in the year. By earlier in the year, I mean actually it was late in the year, but earlier from when I'm recording this, obviously. And Marcus Mariota played fairly well in that game. Didn't play super phenomenally, but I think there's some teams that would be willing to maybe take a risk on Mariota. Two of those being teams we've already mentioned in this video, the Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts. Maybe even the Philadelphia Eagles. Marcus Mariota, remember, he was the second overall pick in his draft class behind Jameis Winston. And that's going to be really something worth monitoring is if he gets dealt, what a package looks like for Mariota. I'm assuming either a second or a third round pick based on what we've seen happen in the past. Josh Rosen, after a terrible rookie year, got dealt for a second round pick. However, Mariota is a few years older, so I don't necessarily know if he really holds all that value. It's like a new car. The moment you drive it off the lot, you lose some value. And the longer it's off the lot, it loses more and more value, especially when they haven't been performing at the highest level. Mariota's in that camp, but I think that he will not be a Raider next season. I do think he gets traded at some point in the offseason here. Factor cap. Nick Foles will be a Philadelphia Eagle going into next season. He's obviously on the Chicago Bears right now. There's been rumors about Carson Wentz to the Bears. Will Foles go back to Philadelphia in a deal surrounding Carson Wentz? That is going to be cap. I don't see the Chicago Bears moving on from Nick Foles. Right now, their QB situation is really messy. They don't have Mitchell Trubisky under contract. It's going to take a lot to bring in a QB, most likely. And Nick Foles, is only making about $6.6 million this next season for the Chicago Bears on his restructured contract that he signed when he got traded there from Jacksonville. And I just don't see the Bears being willing to move on from a guy who's a really good backup QB, can even be a low-end starter in the NFL, that's only making that much money. I just don't see them moving on from him. I think it's capped that he'll be an Eagle next season. I indeed think he's going to be a Chicago Bear. Factor cap. Jared Goff is the long-term answer in Detroit. This is 100% cap, in my opinion. Now, is he going to be the starter next year? Of course. Could he be the starter for the next 2 years? For sure, that's very possible. But I think Detroit is looking at this with eyes to maybe grab a QB at 7 this year. And if they don't, maybe grab a wide receiver. Those are big needs for the Detroit Lions at this point. I think Jared Goff's going to be a bridge QB for them. I think he's going to play, pretty decent, actually. I think he's going to be a movable asset in a year or two once his contract's a little bit shorter. Maybe a team can renegotiate a contract with him come that final year of his deal. And that's what's going to happen with Jared Goff. I think that he's going to end up getting dealt from the Detroit Lions after playing as their starting QB for either a year or two there for the Lions. Factor cap. Jimmy Garoppolo will be traded this offseason. This is going to be capped. There's no way that Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded this offseason. If anything, it's more likely he gets released, but I still don't even think that's going to happen. We haven't heard a lot of rumors or speculation around Jimmy Garoppolo. George Kittle, the tight end there, obviously a superstar, has backed Jimmy Garoppolo, saying that he thinks they can win a Super Bowl with Jimmy G under center, and that kind of support from a star player does go a long way in keeping the QB around. I think Jimmy G will be back for at least one more season with the San Francisco 49ers. Factor cap. Jacoby Brissett is the starter for the Indianapolis Colts next season. I'm going to say that this is cap. I do think it's very likely he comes back to the Colts, but not as the starter. I think it's very likely they make a move for maybe Marcus Mariota, bring in Mitchell Trubisky, some of these guys who went a little bit higher during the draft process than Jacoby Brissett did. Take a chance, swing and miss opportunity on one of these guys, possibly Jameis Winston as well. He is a free agent this offseason. I'm sure the New Orleans Saints would like to keep him around. However, their salary cap situation is much more messy than the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts could afford to go make a move for a variety of guys, possibly Carson Wentz as well. I had mentioned that earlier in the video. I just don't find it likely that Brissett is the starter next season, but I do think he will be an Indianapolis Colt for at least one more season, coming back as the backup. And finally, the most important one of the offseason here, factor cap. Deshaun Watson will be dealt before the NFL draft. And I'm going back and forth on this a little bit in my head. Initially, I thought that there's no way he doesn't get dealt before the NFL draft. But even with the Texans releasing J.J. Watt today, it does sound like they want to keep Deshaun Watson long-term, that they're going to actively work on mending that relationship with Deshaun Watson. However, I'm still going to say that this is a fact. I ultimately think Deshaun Watson is going to put his foot in the ground, demand a trade, get very vocal with it if he has to, like James Harden did with the Houston Rockets. And ultimately, he's going to find his way out of Houston. I'm not sure if it looks like it's going to be to the New York Jets. It could be to the San Francisco 49ers. If that was the case, then obviously Jimmy Garoppolo would get cut. But here, Deshaun Watson, I think it's just not likely he's back with the Houston Texans. It's just a real mess there. I think his agent's going to be working really hard to get other teams motivated to trade for him. And I think the Texans will ultimately come closer to draft time, be motivated to bring in assets. They're going to look really hard and long at themselves in the mirror and realize we don't have assets to build this up. I know Deshaun Watson's a great quarterback, top 10 QB in the league for sure. But if you can't put anything around him with this current state of this roster and this franchise, not even being able to trade J.J. Watt to get assets, this is a real mess for them moving forward. They have a really tough road ahead of them. Even if they keep Deshaun Watson, it's going to be a tough road. Moving Watson doesn't even save this team, but it can get you into the mode of selling. Maybe you move on from Laramie Tunsil, you make some moves, get rid of Brandon Cooks, so on. Bring in a bunch of draft pick assets, and the new GM there, Casario, can start building this thing up the way he sees fit for them. I don't necessarily think that the Texans are going to be moving in the right direction, even with selling all those players, but I think it's better than sitting limbo here and staying right where they're at. I just don't think where they're at is going to be a competitive product at all. I actually see them being in the bottom of the AFC South moving forward. Jaguars are going to be better. Colts and Titans are very good teams. I think Deshaun Watson is going to be dealt before the NFL draft in order to kind of reset there in Houston and hit that rebuild button. I know it's a tough situation. You don't want to trade a young, great quarterback like Watson, but they've kind of got their hands tied now. They don't have ways to improve this roster. They don't have a lot of salary cap space. It's kind of a mess there in Houston. I'd love to know what you guys think about all of these situations. Which teams you think I nailed? Which ones you think I may be wrong about? One might be Sam Darnold. Some people really think he's going to get traded. And if he does, maybe he'd be an Indianapolis Colt at the end of the day too. The Colts are going to have a lot of interest in different QBs. They're going to end up probably bringing one in. I'm just not sure exactly which one yet. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, though, on the QB carousel around the NFL. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe. We'd definitely love to have you aboard here at Utility Sports. And we'll catch you guys in the next video.